I never thought that my first date with my wife would come back to haunt me, especially not on the day after our wedding. As we were basking in the afterglow of our special day, my new sister in law showed up at our doorstep. I could tell from the wicked grin on her face that she had something sinister planned. But before I could even react, she revealed the truth about our first date. According to her, I had cheated on my wife. I was dumbfounded. How could she even think that? To understand why my sister in law would make such a claim, you have to go back a few years. It was during that time that I first met my now wife. We hit it off immediately and went on a date that same week. It was perfect, the food, the conversation, the chemistry. We both knew that we wanted to see each other again, but little did I know that my wife's sister had been watching us the whole time. And when she found out that we had gone on a date, she became furious. You see, my sister in law had a crush on me and was jealous that her sister had snagged me first. At the time, I had no idea that my sister in law harbored any feelings for me. I thought we had a friendly relationship, but apparently I was wrong. She started spreading rumors about me, saying that I had cheated on my wife during our first date. I didn't know about any of this at the time, but it would come back to haunt me later. Fast forward to the day after our wedding, my wife and I were still on cloud nine when her sister showed up uninvited. As soon as she opened her mouth, I could tell that something was off. Her tone was accusatory, and she had a smug look on her face. That's when she dropped the bombshell. She told me that she knew the truth about our first date and that I had cheated on my wife. I was shocked and hurt. How could she even think that I would do something like that to her sister? But it didn't end there. She then pulled out her phone and showed me a series of photos that made my stomach turn. In those photos, it appeared as though I was kissing and having sex with my sister in law on the same day that I went on my first date with my wife. My mind raced as I tried to figure out what was happening. I knew that I had never done anything like that with my sister in law, but the photos were convincing. And then my sister in law revealed the truth. She had staged those photos to make it look like we had been intimate. She had planned this entire thing as revenge for me going on a date with and marrying her sister instead of her. I was furious. How could she be so deceitful and manipulative? But then she threatened me. She said that if I didn't do as she said, she would show those photos to her sister, my wife. My heart sank. I couldn't bear the thought of my wife seeing those photos and believing that I had cheated on her. My sister-in-law's demands were simple. She wanted me to give her a large sum of money, and she wanted me to cut off all ties with her sister. I was torn. I didn't want to give in to her demands, but I also didn't want my wife to see these photos. But then my sister-in-law dared me to get the authorities involved. She was so confident in her lies that she thought she could get away with it. I knew then that I had to take action. I couldn't let her continue to blackmail me and ruin my life. Her challenge to involve the authorities was a wake-up call for me. I knew I couldn't let her continue to manipulate and control me, but I also didn't want to make any rash decisions, so I asked her to give me some time to think things over. Surprisingly, she agreed to wait, but before she left, she handed me the photographs as a reminder of what she was capable of. As soon as she left, I knew what I had to do. My wife and I had recently installed new security cameras in our home, and I immediately checked the footage for any evidence of my sister-in-law's visit. And there it was, clear footage of her entering and leaving our home. But the most crucial evidence was the audio recording of her blackmailing me. I couldn't believe it. She had been so careless that she had given me the proof I needed to protect myself. I felt a sense of relief wash over me as I realized that I had the upper hand now. My sister-in-law's attempts to manipulate and blackmail me had backfired, and I had the evidence to prove it. I woke up my wife. As soon as she opened her eyes and saw the look on my face, she knew something was wrong. "What is it?" she asked, her voice very heavy with sleep. I took a deep breath and told her everything. I told her about the date with her and how her sister felt about it, the blackmail and the evidence I had gathered. She listened to every word, her face contorting in a mix of horror and disbelief. When I finally showed her the photographs and the recording, she was speechless. The silence that followed was suffocating. We both sat there in bed, the weight of the situation hanging heavy in the air. The woman she had called her sister had betrayed her in the worst possible way, and I had been caught in the crossfire. Tears streamed down my wife's face as she clung to me, her body trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. "How could she do this to us?" she cried. "I don't know," I replied, holding her tight. "But we're going to make her pay for it." Later in the day, we contacted the lawyer and filed a report against my sister-in-law. The evidence we had gathered was enough to put her behind bars, but we were hoping the legal process wouldn't be slow and painful. We had to face the reality of disclosing what had happened to the rest of the family. It was a difficult decision, but we knew that it was necessary to expose my sister-in-law for what she had done. We sat down with my wife's parents and explained everything that had happened. At first, they were in disbelief, but as we showed them the evidence, they were horrified. It was a painful experience, but we knew that it was necessary to move forward with the legal process. My sister-in-law's true intentions were exposed, and the whole family was shocked by her audacity to do this the day after our wedding. It was a devastating blow to the family, but we knew that it was better to confront the issue head on rather than let it fester. My wife was particularly affected by the ordeal and often had trouble sleeping at night. She felt violated by her own sister's actions and couldn't believe that someone she trusted could do something so terrible. Despite the emotional toll it took on us, we never lost sight of the fact that justice needed to be served. Our lawyer was confident in the strength of our case, and we were hopeful that the court would see the truth and give my sister-in-law the punishment she deserved. Update 1. On the day of the testimony in court, we were all tense and anxious. My sister-in-law came in and looked defiant, but I could see fear in her eyes. We all sat in the courtroom waiting for our turn to testify. As soon as my wife walked into the courtroom, my sister-in-law launched herself at her. She screamed obscenities and tried to hit her. But before anyone could react, my mother-in-law jumped in and punched her twice in the face. The courtroom erupted into chaos as the bailiffs and police officers tried to separate them. My wife was visibly shaken, and I could see tears rolling down her cheeks. It was clear that the emotional toll of the whole ordeal was catching up with her. She had been through so much already, and now she had to deal with the added stress of her sister's outburst in court. My mother-in-law was also a mess. She was angry and upset that one of her daughters had done this to another. She had always been a strong woman, but seeing her lose control like that was both frightening and heartbreaking. After the commotion died down, we were all called to testify. It was hard to relive the events of that day, but we knew it was necessary to get justice. Our lawyer asked us detailed questions, and we gave honest answers. In the end, the court ruled in our favor. My sister-in-law was found guilty of blackmail and sentenced to 1 year in prison. We all breathed a collective sigh of relief knowing that justice had finally been served. My lawyer said that her attacking my wife in court didn't help her situation. My mother-in-law was let go with a warning as she had tried to protect my wife. Update 2. After the court case was over, news of my sister-in-law's imprisonment spread like wildfire throughout the family. Some members were sympathetic, while others were outraged that she would do such a thing to her own sister and brother-in-law. My wife and I were newlyweds, and many of our family members expressed their concern and support for us during this difficult time. However, my wife and I decided that we needed some space and time to work through our own issues. We sought counsel to help us process what had happened and to find a way forward. As for the rest of the family, they were still trying to come to terms with what had happened. Some members refused to even say my sister in law's name or even acknowledge her existence. Sick, 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 disgusting behavior. Legal action was necessary. And to think something so terrifying could be done by a family member, much less a human. This is similar to what happened to my friend while she was in a new relationship, but it was her ex boyfriend who was threatening her. Sucks for him that the guy she was in a relationship with was a cop. Next story. My husband, 28, and I, 26, are going on vacation in a month. We will be gone for a week. Normally, we would take our two dogs to stay at his aunt's house as she takes good care of them and has a big yard. However, my father in law is having a surgery. He won't reschedule, so his aunt can't watch them that week because she's staying with father in law. My husband paid my mother in law $100 to watch them. She's living with us currently, and part of the arrangement is that she lets the dogs out once a day because we have a young puppy who needs to go out in the middle of our workday. We've had to sit down and talk with her twice already about not doing this. Even if she's home all day, sometimes she doesn't do it. She once left them in the house all day with no potty breaks because she put on her pain patch and fell asleep for 17 hours straight. We found out last night she's again not been doing the one thing we ask her to do. I told my husband that I am uncomfortable with her keeping the dogs for a week unsupervised because she can't even take them out once a day, let alone feed them twice and take care of their other needs. I would like to board them, but he insists his mom is more trustworthy than some stranger and that she is the best option. Her brother agrees with him and says she always takes good care of his dog, but I'm just not convinced. This led to a big fight because I refused to budge as the thought of my 6-month-old puppy being crated for 9+ hours and having accidents in his crate makes me sick. He refuses to budge because he trusts his mom so much more than a boarding facility. AITA? Edit. I didn't mean to come off as callous, saying my father in law wouldn't reschedule his surgery and it has little relevance to the situation other than his aunt can't watch them for us. He's having cryotherapy and won't be anesthetized but has a low pain tolerance, so will need help after the procedure. My husband asked him to reschedule because he didn't want to be away from home during the procedure. Also, I know us both working full time away from home is not ideal for them, but I am starting a new job where I can work from home and also am close enough to come home during the day for a midday walk with them when I'm in the office. I start next week. Asking her to help daily wasn't a permanent solution, just to fix while I found a job that allowed me to be a better pet parent. NTA, it sounds like this is someone you can't trust to look after your dogs. As someone with puppies, they require a lot of time and energy. Them being crated for a week could do some damage, especially in terms of their training and their own well being. I'm reading this hoping they're not already crated that long every day with just a toilet break in between. I would lean towards boarding them with a professional personally. NTA, she's being paid to take care of them, and you've been clear on what they need. And if they're not getting it, it's happening multiple times, doesn't seem to stop. And they're simple things that take only minutes to do. Whether she's intentionally ignoring them or not, she's obviously not fit and able to take care of two dogs at once. If she isn't taking care of them properly, she's definitely not better than some stranger. Plus, that stranger is trained to take care of animals. It's literally their job, and there would be no reason why there would be anything in the way of that person taking care of your dogs. Whereas your mother in law obviously has things to do that make her incapable of caring for them. Plus, they're your dogs. You should decide where they go while you're away. Next story. I, male, 31, had been with Elizabeth, female, 29, for 7 years before we decided to split. We have two kids together. One is kindergarten age and the other is in daycare. Elizabeth worked a job 3 days a week that required 12-hour shifts, 7 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And because of that, I was required to work close by. I needed to make sure my kids got off to school and daycare okay, pick them up on the days she worked, and have them fed and ready for bed when she got home. I felt like I needed to have a flexible schedule to do this because we couldn't afford 5 days of daycare with extended hours. Also, because I made less money, I felt like it was my responsibility. Elizabeth made more than double the money than I did, and I was happy to do this. Keep in mind my income wasn't poor, and I made 60,000 on a good year. She eventually took a remote job in her field, making even more money, and my job shifted to remote as well. We ended up splitting, and I had to move in with my mom because I can't afford rent on my own right now. I foresee this being temporary, maybe a year or so while I save up for a house. My mom has a fully furnished basement with a walkout door, and currently my kids and I share the space. I have a Murphy bed, and my kids have a bunk bed. There's plenty of space for me to work and for them to play, not to mention the rest of the house is available to us. I'd like to have them half the time, but my ex absolutely refuses and is doing everything in her power to not let me have 50-50 custody. Keep in mind, I do not drink, I don't do drugs or gamble or smoke cigarettes. I've never had a problem with them in the past or have any addiction history. I don't hit my kids or yell. I believe in being firm but very gentle, and I'm a very affectionate with my kids. Being a dad is practically the only thing I care about. My ex's perspective is that it's too disruptive to have them going back and forth between homes, and it's too confusing for them. We live 2 minutes from each other, and they deserve better than to be in a basement. She says she can provide for them better than I can. She's also very critical of me that I can provide a home for them and live with my mom. She considers me to be a bad father because of that. When I mentioned that I couldn't have focused just on my career because I was also helping with the kids, her rebuttal is that nobody told you to do that. If you went out and got a better job, we could have afforded daycare 5 days. The money just wasn't as important as being involved in my kids' lives at that point. Not to mention the dilemma of the cost of daycare. I'm more than capable of buying their groceries and taking care of them when they're here, but rent is so outrageous I can't afford it right now. I would really love some perspective on this. I've been such a large part of my kids' lives this far, and I don't want to be an every other weekend dad. AITA for trying to get 50-50? NTA, she's full of it. If it was the other way around, she would be furious that you were trying to lower her visitation because she made less than you. You did what you did in the best interest of your kids, and I'm sure a judge would see that. I would also consider petitioning for spousal support if you not making as much as her is a major concern on her end. The whole point is to provide a similar lifestyle situation at each parent's home, so you could always suggest that if her main argument is not having as much as her. NTA. Get some curtains to hang around their bed so it's technically a private room and get your ass to court. She doesn't want to pay child support or alimony, and that's no reason to punish the kids by taking away your time with them. One thing you can maybe do to throw her a bone is be flexible for vacations in the custody agreement. If she can afford to take them to Disney for 2 weeks or whatever, be cool with that. If you can't afford to, let her take them so the kids get the experience. And she gets a win, which makes her feel better and maybe be less vindictive. My custody agreement is unlimited international travel as long as no trip is more than 2 weeks. No travel to countries with a travel warning. And I have to prove I've bought a return ticket. None of those are hardships, but it was protection for my ex in case I won the lotto and wanted us to live on a cruise ship or something. LOL. NTA, your ex should know that it's better for children to have both parents involved, especially since you aren't a bad influence or abusive. The fact they have a loving parent who made sacrifices instead of just getting a better job so they could foist the kids off on strangers instead is amazing. Your kids need and deserve to have you in their lives. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.